Welcome to Decision Point. El Paso Independent Schools have been tarnished by the cheating scandals and poor performance that we've heard of lately. The state has stepped in and appointed a board of managers to clean up the mess. So Chairman Dee Margo and Blanca Enriquez join us today to update us on the resurrection of EPISD. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good to be here. Yeah, well, we're glad you could take the time to stop by and let us know what's going on. So just to update people, why did the state of Texas step in to appoint you guys as a board of managers, either one of you?
Well, Michael Williams, the Commissioner of Education for the Texas Education Agency, TEA, determined we had a dysfunctional trustees. And given all that had transpired and the fact that our former superintendent is serving time in jail right now for corruption and mismanagement, he did not feel in his eyes or his mind that the response had been as adequate as it should be or as swift as it should be by the former trustee. So under his power, he didn't do scorched earth. Scorched earth would have been completely remove all trustees, and then it would have forced new elections immediately. And what he ended up doing was saying he's going to replace the trustees with a board of managers, and we have a limited time frame. We're at large, in effect, at representing all of El Paso Independent School District areas, and we have the full rights and privileges of a regular trustee, except we've been appointed. And I'm told our tenure is up to 2 years. I don't know that we could be extended or not, but it's supposedly up to 2 years is what I've been told by Commissioner Williams.
Right. Now, are you surprised at what you've learned about the level of dysfunction at EPISD since you've gotten on the board of managers and you've sort of gotten the inside story on what's been going on? Has it been shocking to you?
It has, in that this is a big system, and you have a lot of processes and procedures that were not working, that people should have monitored, should have looked into, and should have corrected, and that hasn't been the case. So we're having to come in and look at the district and look at two areas. First of all, the business portion of it, because this is almost like a Fortune 500 company with a $482 million budget. And on the other hand, we also have to make sure that all of the systems are functioning so that we can assure a quality education for the 63,000 students that attend El Paso Independent School District and the thousands of employees that serve the district as well.
Well, where do you think this system went wrong? Obviously, Mr. Garcia was doing things that were unethical, and illegal, and the board's job is to monitor him, right? So what's supposed to be the check and balance here? What didn't happen that was supposed to happen?
Well, the internal auditor was supposed to report only to the trustees, and they allowed a change where the internal auditor would report only to the superintendent. So then the superintendent screened the information and it went to the trustees.
Now, did the internal audit show that these things were going on, or was that?
Well, the internal auditor, with regard to Bowie and the disappearing of students, I don't know that the internal auditor would have seen that unless he was monitoring the data flow. The data was there to determine it. Again, that would have been a normal, if something was discovered. They have hot reports and these things. That the point was that there was a disconnect between the internal auditing functions and the trustees. Right. And it was going to the superintendent. The superintendent was a bad actor who was covering up his misdeeds and suppressing the information.
So what, go ahead.
I was going to say, so it boils down to lack of control.
Right.
There was a tremendous amount of lack of control, lack of checks and balances, and oversight, and obviously by the result, it looks like we were just signing off on whatever this one person said.
Right. Just completely trusting him and his word. What was in it for Garcia? Why would he do that? Go to all that trouble? Was he getting bonuses based on performance?
I think there was some. I haven't looked at his contract. I don't know that you have, but I think there were some compensation incentives based on graduation rates and certain things like that. So that was there. Also, I mean, it's just human nature and power. I mean, as Dr. Enriquez said, this is like a Fortune 1000 company with a $500 million budget and 9,000 employees and 62,000 students, and you can get it's pretty heady. Right. So and it's one of the largest employers in the city of El Paso.
Right.
Has an impact across the board. So just natural ego can run wild. Right. It's kind of normal human nature.
Right. Now, you said that they could have dismissed the board immediately and called for new elections, but instead he chose to go with the board of managers. Why would he have done that? In fact, when I read that, I was kind of surprised. I thought they should get these guys out. They are responsible for allowing this to occur and not showing oversight and so forth. So why did he take that particular tack of appointing you guys versus just holding the new elections and turning over a new leaf?
Go ahead.
As you look at the process of what happened, I think Commissioner Williams gave the Board of Trustees some time.
Right.
He said, okay, you are in power. This is what has happened. I'm going to give you some time to clean it up, to act on this. And based on what transpired, they didn't move fast enough. They didn't take the corrective actions or make the changes that they needed to as far as their leadership and the decisions they were making. So then came in the Board of Managers. But he did warn them. He did tell them ahead of time. Right. So they had an opportunity to make the change, and they didn't.
Right.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, while I was still in legislatures, when I invited him out last fall, I think he came out in September? I think it was September, and then he met with them, he talked to them, and said, time is at hand. And so Dr. Enriquez is right. He gave them an opportunity, an ample opportunity to take action. And it seemed that if you look at the timeline, only when he pulled the trigger on naming us as a board of managers did you start seeing personnel actions being taken. Right. And so...
Keep in mind also, and I believe that this was also a decision made by the commissioner, he appointed a group of citizens to look at the situation and to make recommendations to the trustees. Dr. Jimmy Vasquez from Region 19 led that group. And when they got up and made the presentation to the Board of Trustees as to what their recommendations were, they were not accepted.
Yeah. True. So they were remaining in a pretty unreceptive character that they kind of had demonstrated throughout, not being very service oriented. So the Board of Managers, both of you are have been in executive positions and run organizations at a very high level. You as the director of Head Start for Region 19, and you in your capacity as state representative, as well as the insurance company and so forth. So when you look at the system through the lens of organizational excellence and accountability, which you're both used to being held accountable for your performance and for your organization's performance, what needs to change at EPISD other than the superintendent, which you're working on?
It had almost become a command and control structure. Everything was emanating up to the superintendent for all decision process.
Oh, really?
And you know,
kind of a dictatorship, huh?
You could probably use that as a characterization. I would. My personal philosophy is always to push the decision making down to its lowest common denominator. I mean, the lowest level that you can to empower people to make those decisions, because that's closer to the actions, closer to the school. The principals need to have full authority. I understand some authority had been removed from certain principals. They need to have. One of the questions we've been having during our budget process is how much of the budget decisions are being made by the respective principals of their schools if they're going to be in control.
Right.
And not have everything approved by the central office.
Right.
So we're still working through some of that. We've got to undo certain things, but by the same token, we want to make sure, as I've stated at the meetings, we don't want the tail to wag the dog. We don't want to have knee-jerk reactions that are a result of bad actors and improper character in positions previously. We want to hope we're going to have the best and the brightest and the most committed people, and we want to empower them with the right tools and to make the right decisions and hire the right people.
Right. Well, it sounds like you're talking about something that's sort of the opposite of what we often see in bureaucracies, which is when you know there's one problem or one deviation, all of a sudden you implement all these new rules and regulations and accountability structures that create even more bureaucracy. So what you're saying is that you don't want to overreact, even though there was a lack of accountability. Your response is more to fix the overall system, not put in more rules and regulations and that type of thing? Or am I wrong about that? I don't know. Blanca?
No, I think, as Dee just mentioned, you know, the authority needs to be given, needs to be proposed and authorized for the lowest level, and that's the principle of that school. Each school is different. From Coronado to Bowie High School, you see different resources, you see different needs, and so it is that principle that needs to be authorized to make those decisions, while at the same time needs to be held accountable and needs to follow certain rules and regulations. That's where we come in terms of policies and procedures, making sure that those policies and procedures are in place that are going to be in the best interest of the students, the teachers, and the community, but that then the principals are being held accountable to follow them.
So it sounds like there are going to have to be some major changes in the way the central office functions, primarily.
Well, they're already reducing staff at the central office. I think.
Was it bloated, do you think?
I don't know that I'd say bloated, but there was some probably more personnel than was required. Things had been brought up to the top for control factors.
Right.
So we haven't really gotten into the nuts and bolts. One of the dilemmas we've got, while philosophically I think we're all in pretty much agreement on what we'd like to do and try to institutionalize as much, we want to assume we get the right people in the right positions, and then create a framework that allows them to be as fruitful as they can, recognizing you know, the limitations that we've got in any organization. Right. But you know, we've got to avoid microing. And you know, I still sense sometimes we succumb to that just like anybody else would. And the goal is to be of a more macro and let the people do it. But part of the dilemma is that we have an interim superintendent, and so to a certain extent we're going to have to to learn more. We're going to have to be a little more micro than we would probably prefer, because we're all new, and we're trying to get our hands around all of the issues.
Right. Now, you are unique as a board of managers because you have a limited time frame. You're not going to be elected or re-elected, so you're not trying to cater to a constituency, so to speak. You're just there to fulfill a charge for the students and the people of El Paso, right?
We want to do what's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We recognize all of us have had kids, children go through EPISD, and you know, it's near and dear to us. And if you look at your tax bill, you know, we talk about a Fortune 1000, but you look at your tax bill, if you're a resident of EPISD, it's the largest item you pay in your tax bill. So
we're all,
there's
property owners are
you
on
know,
this.
there's a
Yeah.
responsibility there.
stakeholders.
There's a collective responsibility there.
And that was lost somewhere in the mix where people, the Board of Trustees and the superintendent lost sight of that, apparently, certainly. Now, is there, one thing that I would ask, is there something in the state of Texas system that penalizes and makes it a lot more difficult for districts like El Paso, or you know, also you've got San Elizario, Cañutillo, and so forth being investigated by the FBI as well. So is there something about this area that makes it more difficult to educate students and be accountable for success and that sort of thing? I mean, I don't know. It seems like there's something wrong here.
No, in general, I wouldn't think there is. I do think that it goes back to the decisions made by a certain person or by a certain group of people that that they're not getting the results that they want, so they're going to force the results that they want. Not realizing that in the long run, it does hurt students, because if these students don't get the complete and preparation that they need when they are in elementary school and then high school, then going to college is much more difficult. Right. So it goes back to doing the right thing for the students.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, but there are other districts in the state of Texas who have board of managers.
Yes.
I mean,
so we're not
unique. We're not unique. Atlanta is in the news because of their superintendent pulling some of the same shenanigans that Garcia did. And they're under federal indictments and grand jury and all of that. That's a shame. That's not to excuse that. And we certainly don't want to dismiss that. It's wrong. Any way you cut it, it's wrong. And the people that have suffered, not only the kids at Bowie, but the entire, you know, all of the morale with the teachers, the reputation of the district, the reputation of certain schools, things of that nature. So
when you look at the per capita pupil expenditure of EPISD compared to Austin or San Antonio or whoever we would be considered comparable with, what is it the same, more or less? How much is it per student? Does anybody know?
it's a little over 5,000 in EPISD per student. It's a little less than other areas, but also when I was in the legislature, we were presented with information that showed outcomes, educational outcomes, are not necessarily directly correlated with the amount of dollars you spend. So yes, you want enough to fulfill the basics, but there's not a true direct, necessarily a direct correlation between more money and better outcomes. Right. It just doesn't, you know, again, it goes back to the nature of the individuals running the show and their commitments, and you know, it goes down to the teachers and how where they are. But the Supreme Court, the Texas Supreme Court, is going to be determining the funding mechanisms for the school districts, and they're going to make
Is that going to be possibly changed?
Could be, yeah. They're waiting on the decision. It could come any month. We thought it would be this summer. It's going to be equity. It's going to be based on equity, fairness, and adequacy. Is it enough? but they're going to throw in something else called efficiency as they study their outcomes, and that's never been determined by the courts. And efficiency is simply a way of saying how efficiently are you using the state dollars we're giving you. And my fear is by looking at El Paso, we'll go, not too efficiently given what's transpired.
Right.
But
how would you assess that? Just you know, how do you assess efficiency? And I mean,
well, I don't know.
I'm wondering. About
well,
that.
you know, part of it could be on direct dollar expenditures. You know, was there wasteful spending,
right.
redundancy, bureaucracy, too much personnel? I don't know how
right.
they're benchmarking across
sure.
the state.
Okay.
But we're reduced there. I think there are a number of ways.
It's a good question to ask. It is a good question to ask, whether we can answer it or not.
There are a number of things I think that you can come
right.
up with in the model, but irrespective of that, we've got our allocation for this next for the next biennium, for the next 2 years. We pretty well know where we are. We took action to not raise our tax rates.
Right.
We did not. We determined when we passed our budget, I think a week ago, and our budget had to be passed by June 30th, and we did not raise the tax rate at all. Nor would any of us probably have gone along with it if that had been recommended, but that
right.
did not change.
Right. That's good.
If property values go up, then yeah, your tax bill's going to go up.
Yeah.
So that doesn't change it, but the rate did not change. And I think that was a proper and prudent thing
right.
to do.
Right.
I also think that across the district, you got to consider, how are you investing this dollar? The amount of monies that we get from various resources
right.
or revenue sources that we have.
So what would be an example
How are
of
we
that?
investing our money in terms of our human capital, in terms of
The
our
program. Talk about the program. Trying to align it with program.
Right, align with the program. When you take a look at the needs of these students, and you benchmark, you say this is where we want our students to be. If that's what we want, then how much is it going to cost us, and where do we place our monies?
How do you back into that? So it's program driven,
yes,
not just personnel driven by X number of students with X number of teachers and X number of support. You know, saying, well, what are we what's the outcome we're trying to get to? So let's back the dollars in to try to fulfill that programmatic desire. And we're not sure. That those have been a number of questions by Dr. Enriquez, Mr. Archuleta, Carmen Arrieta Candelaria, and
Judy Castleberry.
And Judy Castleberry as well, the rest of us.
So you guys have been asking some hard questions,
yes.
is my understanding. So what are some of the other hard questions you've been asking that maybe haven't been looked at before?
A simple question is, how do we determine our construction projects? Have we prioritized? Have we looked at the needs? Are we talking to principals in terms of the condition of our schools, that we can say, given the condition of the school, then this is how we would prioritize our dollars this year. Next year we would do this, and looking at a long range projection just in facilities alone, because facilities, schools, that is the environment that is going to either advance or decrease the educational process.
Yeah.
And so just that question alone, we've asked a lot of questions on. We're spending a lot of money on construction projects here. How did we get there? What are our priorities? And are we following the bid process? I've asked the question, which are the engineering companies that we're awarding these construction projects? And what about the subcontractors and all of this, so that we can make sure that we are following our procedures and that we are investing our money where we need to invest it. Because otherwise, when you have dilapidated, rundown schools, it's going to cost a lot more money to get them.
Right.
To get them into a functional
we have
procedure.
some concerns about the deferred maintenance budgets, making sure that they're adequate. We've gotten into issues related to one simple question that was a public record that was discussed when we were there was they budgeted for a half a clerk or a half a person at all the elementary schools for support in the offices of the elementary schools, such as so greeting parents and public, and they were shorthanded. And our question was, well, did everybody really want another clerk, or would they have wanted maybe another teacher or another,
or whatever.
Applying it elsewhere, and to make sure. So we've been asking the questions about who determined not just a central office and HR determination, but making sure that it did come up from the users.
Sure.
To allow them to apply those dollars in the most efficient manner.
Right. Yeah.
So those are little things we've been working on.
Yeah, I mean, those are all good management questions that should be asked and should have been asked all along. I don't think people realize, even if you don't have kids in EPISD or kids coming up in EPISD, how important is it to the community that we have good schools? I mean, can we attract good business?
No, from a workforce standpoint, it's critical.
Yeah.
I mean, that it is the basis of our workforce. And to attract industry and capital investment, one of the biggest problems we have in El Paso is that we're the only major metropolitan area in the state of Texas in which our tax base is 60-point-something% residential. And every other large community of our size in the state of Texas, it's 60% plus commercial, not residential.
So it's flip-flopped,
we in order to get that flipped and to have more commercial tax base, we've got to attract industry. How do we attract industry? Based on our labor force. We've got to have an educated labor force. We're behind the curve on the number of high school graduates in our workforce. We're way behind in college graduates.
Right.
And I'm not saying you need to go to college for everyone, but the point is that we've got to make sure they come out of high school, and if they want to go technical school or trade schools or fine, but at least be prepared to do that. And then those who want to go to college, we got to make sure they're prepared.
Right. Yeah. Well,
simply put, education is economic development.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a good way to look at it.
Education is economic development.
Right.
We invest in education. We are investing in the economic success of this community.
Yeah. And we're going to keep those people here if we have the good jobs. So
Absolutely.
Which is really nice.
Absolutely.
Too. So, unfortunately, we're out of time. You guys have been so informative, and we really appreciate you taking the time to stop by and enlighten us on what's going on. I'm excited about what the future holds for EPISD. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So does it sound like the Board of Managers will get the district back on track? Tell us what you think on Facebook, Twitter, or our website, KSCE TV /Decision Point. Thank you for watching.